we are back though with our second segment. I have two cases. I'm sorry. I have one more case here to talk about. It might take a little bit. This is the Delphi case. We have some updates. So, as you know, a suspect was arrested last week, Richard Allen. And as you know, that's all we know. So, they held a press conference to tell us all about what was going to be, we thought, and then the press conference ended up being, no, just we need more information, and what? So what has happened since is a little interesting and crazy. So Richard Allen apparently didn't have a lawyer. I don't know if he's finally asked for one, but this whole time he's been arrested, no lawyer, which I wonder about the constitutionality of that. Like if you know that whole thing about when you're arrested and supposedly they say if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be provided to you. And they're like, somehow, well, he thought he'd get one, but then he found out they were expensive. What? No, he pled. He should have been given an attorney. He should have been represented. So not only that, but they were moving him all around, apparently due to the nature of, I don't even know, Indiana plus the horrible crime that he's associated with. And I say associated because we don't know exactly what they're saying because we still have no probable cause affidavit. And we won't even know anything until November 22nd, which is, and this is only the 11th. So I don't think he has seen the probable cause because he doesn't have a lawyer. The lawyer would get it. So this is all very strange that he was arrested before we even knew about it. So he was arrested October 25th, I believe, which was a Wednesday. Thursday he pled, which nobody knew he was pleading. That wasn't public record. And he pled not guilty. And then Friday it broke for the public. And then we had that weird press conference. And then since that time, he's been moved twice. He was moved from one county jail to another county jail, like out of the county that the crime occurred in. And then now he's in an undisclosed state penitentiary somewhere, some state institution. And the judge, Brian Diener, I believe, said he didn't want to be the judge. There's a number of things that you can say, like I have a conflict of interest, or I'm biased, or you know what he said? I'm afraid. He's afraid. He said the amount of that. He also said he was the one that said yes, seal everything, keep everything. No, everything needs to be sealed because of the ravenous public, whatever. Okay, number one. Now we have a new judge. Her name is Fran Gull. She will be taking over. She has done very big cases. There was a huge like domestic violence, like a sort of, I don't know if it was considered domestic terrorism, but the guy blew up somebody, like blew up one house that like blew up a bunch of houses, like overdid it, a whole neighborhood. It was crazy. She handled that, so it had a lot of attention, a lot of media attention. But what is going on? It's weird because we've had so many cases. And besides the Lori and Chad Daybell, some of it, everything else, the cases that I've personally been covering since I started last year in February, things come out. We hear like gross details sometimes that we don't even want to know about. So it's very strange that we don't know the probable cause, that the actual suspect doesn't know the probable cause, that the investigators are asking the public, and there still is a tip line. They want to know, what do you know about this? So here's what I think it appears like. We know that a week or so before Richard Allen was arrested on the 25th, they had looked in some nearby river to his house. They also did have a search warrant on his property and house. So they found something. We know that he worked at CVS. Now, I am wondering, and tell me if this is crazy, but this seems to involve federal people still involved. They're still seeming to be investigating, even though they've got this guy arrested. We still have the connection to Keegan Kline, and yes, I am sorry. Sorry, law enforcement. We do not believe you. Nobody believes you, because it's totally illogic to believe that Keegan Kline got 5 counts. I mean, granted, he had like 35 or some crazy number of counts against him, but he had 5 counts reduced right after this guy was arrested. Seems like a little quid pro quo. Quid pro quo. I said that a little dyslexically. So we know that Keegan Kline ran the Anthony Shots social site. We know that the Anthony Shots was the last person to talk with Libby. I believe he was communicating. And I watched a YouTuber, I forget her name. I watched one other thing she did. I kind of really like her, but she, as is per the usual, you guys, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when a case gets a lot of attention, a YouTuber could never have spoken about before, and then all of a sudden they're like, let's talk about Delphi. So, if you've been watching my channel, you know I really do. I talk about the things that everybody's talking about in the past week or so. And Delphi has been talked about way before I started, but I mean, since I've started, there have been like 3 or 4 weeks where we've gotten things happening, and I talked about it. But it irks me a little bit that when people, and granted, they say like, well, I'm new about this, but, and then they depend on, a lot of them do lives, which I do not do all the time, and then they look at their chat and they're like, they get the information from the people listening versus, and this is probably because I was a PhD person, but you got to go to your sources and check your sources. Okay, so what we do know is that Anthony Schott spoke with Libby while she and I believe Abby together were at a, they went to a sleepover. Do you remember being a tweenie, like 12, 11, 13, 14, you know, before you really get into like high school stuff? They were at a sleepover because there was no school, because it was a holiday on Monday, and it was super warm too. No school, so they had a sleepover. They spoke with, like, they thought they were talking to some boy. And the boy, I believe it did say, the boy said to meet them on this bridge, arranged to go to this park. So whoever was running Anthony Shots, whether it be, I mean, if it wasn't Keegan Kline, then Keegan Kline knows who else had the passwords. It seems as if there's a group, a nexus, because we also have Ron Logan, who was the farmer guy whose land that the girls were found on, and the voice, as the FBI has said, it's not, they say his voice is not inconsistent. I talked about this last week, which means it is consistent with his voice. And if you listen, it sounds just like the guy. He had a very distinctive voice. Looks like him too. And he says, guys down the hill. Now, somebody had an interesting point. What if guys down the hill, what if he wasn't talking just to the 2 girls? What if other people had come around that we didn't see on the phone? And we've only seen, what, like, how many seconds? And it is, we know, the FBI said it's 43 seconds long, and we've only seen a very short section of it. So, it seems like there's a group, because that Ron Logan, he created an alibi. He was asking people to lie about where he was prior to the girls being found on his property. Prior. You don't make up an alibi before before anybody else knows a crime occurred, unless you know about the crime. I think. My opinion, allegedly. And he died in January. So, but that's Keegan Kline, who was, he had the site who was communicating directly with the girls who said to meet there. We have Ron Logan, whose lands they were found on, who it sounds like his voice, who has a fake alibi before the girls were even found. But they haven't arrested those two. Well, Ron Logan is now dead. They did look at his house, but I'm saying now Keegan Kline is in jail for his, corn, his big crop of corn. I'm using YouTube-friendly language there. Child fields of corn. And so that's what we have. Now we have this guy. Where does he, now this is a third guy, how does he come into the picture? Everybody has said, does he really look like either of those two images that they showed? Not that it really matters because, they have more evidence, I'm sure. Those were eyewitnesses, and we know eyewitness things aren't always accurate. So, but he worked at the pharmacy. Go with me on this. So the facts are that he was arrested. The facts are they found something at his house we don't know. We don't know the rest of the facts because the probable cause, we know they're acting real squirrely about it. They're still asking for tips. They're still investigating, so it seems bigger. And we know the feds are still involved, which means they are usually involved in things that have a federal, multi-state issue. And we know this involves corn. So that usually tends to be, especially when you work with the internet, think of Josh Duggar's corn problem. So what if he works at the pharmacy? Did he have access to ether or any substance that you could put? Because if you remember, there was an FBI 9-page report that was leaked, and the murder sheet had it, and then it was scrubbed off the internet, but it was up for enough time that people grabbed it. And the FBI agent described that the girls were probably posed, that they had lost copious amounts of blood, and that the perpetrator probably had a lot of blood on them. I believe there was also cleaning products involved, and they looked staged. I don't think they found a bunch of blood. They just said there had been a large loss of blood. So what if they were, but there was no defensive wounds described. So, and this is, again, now I'm theorizing from the little facts we know, but what if they were knocked out, and I believe, I'm just going to make a guess, and it's gross, but so if you're watching on YouTube, which is the only place this is because my podcast isn't on podcasting anymore. So what if, really quick, and if you do it and they would know front to back. So if somebody does this from the front of somebody, the cuts are a little bit different than if they're standing behind you. And if they're in front of you, the arterial spray is going to be copious amounts. And of course, we know it's copious because if you go across, arterial blood means it takes a while to expire, which means your heart is still pumping, which means there's spray every time your heart, especially even if you weren't conscious, I believe your body would be would itself be, and I don't know that for sure because I am not a forensic anything, but the FBI agent, we do know facts. She wrote that she believed the perpetrator would have had to have done something with their clothes. So did they have something like ether, something that they could put over their face and knock them out very quickly? Because they didn't fight, and there were two of them, and then they were posed. It seems like you would need. Were there multiple people there? Or were there just a couple of people there but multiple people involved in getting them? And did they document this for some group nefarious? That's what it seems to be going towards. Something larger, something involve a group, and something very bad. Very, very bad. Why do I say that? Because the family wants it all kept sealed too. There's something. The thing is, though, we've all watched Dexter. We've all watched Puck on Scandal. We've all seen every single horrific documentary on serial killers. So we're imagining like the worst. So I to the family, it's horrific because they know the victims, and I can't even imagine. It's bad enough reading fictitious stuff about that. So, but the other thing is, we don't know what Richard Allen's role is. We know he had something at his house. Did he have the trophies that they were looking for? The FBI agent also hypothesized that there must have been something missing from the scene, because she thought that this person would keep a trophy. There were things missing. You know, I'm going to guess underwear. Why? Because it's always underwear. Isn't it though? I don't know why. Because freaks are freaks. Either that, or it's either underwear or it's a piece of jewelry. They always take either jewelry. That's what I think anyways. So was that what was found? See, we don't know. And in fact, he doesn't know. And I don't know if they're trying to get him to talk. Was he just tangentially involved? Did he just supply the drugs? Maybe he wasn't. Do you know what I mean? So this is crazy. And I don't know if his constitutional rights were infringed upon by, he was arrested, obviously, and booked, but wasn't provided an attorney. And I think he had to be provided an attorney, and then he wasn't provided, I think, you know, the writ of habeas corpus. That's what a dyslexic defense attorney would say. You have no writ of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus? Habeas corpus. It's Latin for that you can't keep the body. Basically, you can't keep someone. The body would be the defendant. You can't keep them locked up without a reason. I think I think his rights were violated if he didn't know and he was kept. I mean, I know they want to break this. I know they want to. I don't know, man. Something wackadoodle is going on in Indiana. And because Indiana's Indiana, if you're from Indiana, well, I'm sure you already know. I mean, they've got like weird pollution problems that get swept under the thing. And there's strange corruption things. And Indiana's very interesting for all the corn that's there and all the other corn. It's a strange state. And I should know because I live right next to it. And I've got my own strange state problems. All right. So, the Delphi case, we're still waiting. We won't know anything until November 2nd unless it pings. And so I've told you my theory. My theory is I think that I think they were bled out. I hope they weren't like what you did to Deer. I hope they didn't do that, for God's sakes. They did something horrific to those girls. And that's why the family wants it. But the thing is, it's going to come out. Anyways. It's going to come out. And that's the Delphi case. That was our third case. Now we're on to our fourth case. So, drinks up. We also have sort of a constitutional issue here. So we have an update on Caitlin Armstrong case, which is the Mariah Wilson murder. Mariah Wilson was a cyclist in town at her friend's house. She had gone on a date with a man who was living with another woman, but she was staying with a friend. Somehow, I think it's really interesting, the thesis that the police have developed, and I thought it was sketchy from the start. And when Caitlin Armstrong's lawyers got a hold of everything, they thought it was really sketchy too. She was arrested on she had a 675 Botox charge that she skipped out on. And they arrested her, but then they said, oh, the arrest warrant, there's something wrong written on the arrest warrant. So technically they sort of said like, oh yeah, you're not under arrest. It's really weird. It was done really, no offense. I think this is why constitutional rights and Mirandized, your civil rights matter. Even if Caitlin Armstrong is guilty of sin, it matters to anybody before they go to court. Even if you are guilty of sin, you still can't trick somebody into talking to you and then use that as evidence in your probable cause. That's the whole idea of Miranda. Miranda was that you can't get somebody to talk to the police and then use that against them if they don't even know that they're being like under arrest. So what happened was Caitlin Armstrong's lawyer said, look, we want everything she said in that interview thrown out because you didn't tell her she was under arrest, and you didn't, and then you did tell her she was under arrest, and then you didn't tell her she wasn't really, you didn't make that clear. She asked to leave, you guys, within like 10 minutes. She asked to leave 5 times, and 3 times, she asked, do I need an attorney? And they had a 9-hour pre-trial hearing about this stuff. And in Texas, I'll just tell you, you don't have all the rights you think you have. This is my opinion as to what happened. And Austin is supposed to be liberal. I guess liberal for Texas, but if you read the transcripts, they picked her up in their police cars and brought her to the station and told her she was under arrest for that Botox charge. And then somewhere in the middle of this, they're like, oh yeah, the date was wrong on something, your birth date was wrong, or something was spelled wrong, or like her house number, one of those like small things. But she wasn't able, she asked if she, like, can I leave? She asked 5 times. She asked for a lawyer 3 times. Well, she didn't say, can I have a lawyer? And that's what the defense was saying, is there is no magic words that you have to say. You don't have to say, can I have a lawyer? Or you can't, like, or the interview has to stop or not. She was saying, should I get a lawyer here? That should have been enough for them to stop and say, do you want a lawyer? Because she wasn't really clear what was going on, and they did not help it. In fact, it seemed like they wanted it a little murky so she would keep talking without being Mirandized. Like she was just volunteering this information, therefore it was all good. So I don't know if you can half be arrested and then half be unarrested and then you're trying to leave. So when the cop was under being examined by the defense in the hearing, she was under oath, and she's like, no, if she would have left, I would have let her. Okay, raise your hand if in this era, especially Texas, if the cops hauled you in under arrest, started talking to you, and you said, can I leave? And they didn't say yes, that you just walk towards the door and walk past them. I mean, no offense. I'd expect nowadays I could be shot if I tried to get out of a room after cops brought me in. I mean, I personally would do what Scott Reich on Crime Talk says. If the police want to talk to you, you need a lawyer. You just do. Even if you did nothing wrong. Put that in your head. I'd like a lawyer, please. Oh, well, we're just here to talk. We don't want it. I'd like a lawyer, please. Just ask for a lawyer. If the cops want to put you in a box, if cops want to ask you to come down to the station, if the cops want to talk to you, you say, okay, I need a lawyer. And then if they try to tell you how it's no big deal, it's okay, I'd still need a lawyer, please. Could you get me a lawyer? I'd like a lawyer. And then you say, am I under arrest? No, I'm going to leave now. And then you walk your happy little ass out. Even if they brought you, you just keep walking. Put that in your head. What can we learn from this? Everybody's so focused on the story created that somehow, I still don't know how she would have known that that girl was staying at that place. Like, I know where maybe her boyfriend went, but she didn't know who was in that house. She didn't know if there were 10 people in that apartment, and she just went in guns blazing and just happened to get lucky that girl was by herself. I do not, and she had no way to know that who was in that place. There's a lot of reasonable doubt in my mind, and I've been clear about this. And you have to think about, what if it was you or your kid who is in Caitlin's position? Like, Mariah's death needs to be avenged, but let's get the right person. And there was only one person that knew she was there where she was, and that the friend was gone. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And that person was on a motorcycle, which is easy to drop and run around and get back, and that person had a whole lot of information to give about whatever. I don't know. I really don't know. All I know is that if you ever get asked to speak to the police and you go into any room that's a box, you're gonna need a lawyer. Don't say anything. It doesn't matter if they just want your help. They can have your help with a lawyer. You want a lawyer. And if you ask, am I under arrest? Then I am leaving. Because you're providing them probable cause if you just yap and yap and yap. Because they need to get that collar. That's their job. And the prosecutor, they're elected. They need to get convictions. And I hate to be I'm not anti-cop, but I'm just saying, like, this is one of those cases. All right, so, so Caitlin's, she wanted that interview thrown out, and the judge said, nah, that's okay. Miranda, pisha. You should have known you weren't under arrest, girl. Like I said, don't mess with Texas. And the second thing they wanted, there was something called, specifically, a frank, where, what is it called? A Frank's motion. That there were inconsistencies within the probable cause, and therefore it should be thrown out. Well, the judge found out that, there were some inconsistencies, like the time. They found out the time that the guy used was wrong, and then he went back and sort of like, let me just tell you. And then the time he got was from something somebody set in their house, not anything like law enforcement or a city set. So who knows if that was even accurate. I am telling you, so this judge was like, it doesn't, basically, cops, Miranda, whatever, use what she said. Oh, yes, he didn't do things right in the probable cause, but whatever. Dude, Texas is pro-prosecution, even in Austin. I will not be visiting. That state scares the bejesus out of me. So anyways, Caitlin Armstrong is going to go to trial. That was her first pretrial hearing, and she failed on both those parts. Although, boy, I think she's got a great appeal once you get out of the state of Texas, maybe. I don't know what their federal district is, but I think your constitutional rights have been violated slightly. And again, we want convictions that stand. We don't want the state to fiddle about and arrest and prosecute and even jail people that are innocent. And I'm sorry, Texas, I believe in the Innocence Project, has one of the worst rates. So let's take our time. I know it's frustrating, but we get convictions when we get all our ducks in the row. When we jump and hurry up and just do things based on impressions, that ends up biting us in the butt.